Welcome, players, coaches, parents, and fans to the Simple Kicking Show. Your view and listen right here and right now means a lot. Thank you for your support. It makes this thing a lot of fun. And tonight's Coaches Roundtable is super interesting. But before we get into that, let's talk about Big Game USA. Big Game USA manufactures a football that thousands of college and high school teams use, and they're made right here in Dallas, Texas. I fully support the ball, and if you want to try it for yourself, get 10% off your order. Go to biggameusa.com, scroll to the bottom of the page, and tap Kicker Footballs. Use the following code for 10% off your order, SimpleKick2021. Again, use SimpleKick2021 for 10% off your kicking football order. It is beyond difficult to get a college scholarship. And that's because there's like 1,000 kickers that are competing for maybe a dozen scholarships every year. And plus you have the transfer portal that you have to compete with now. So how do you get on the top of these college coaches list? On this roundtable tonight, 3 analysts spill the beans. So if you're looking for a blueprint to success, this episode is for you. Lee, hit the theme.
Welcome to Simple Kicking with your host, James Hairston.
Welcome to the Simple Kicking Show. This is a coach's roundtable, kind of a coast-to-coast roundtable of sorts. We have Eric Raisbeck from Penn State. We have Ryan Saparto from Oregon State and Ryan Dougherty from USC. All 3 guys are special teams analysts, highly regarded in the space by coaches and their peers, and it's really exciting to have all you 3 on. So we're going to go and talk about recruiting and developing high school kickers. And the reason why we're doing this topic is we're sandwiched in between the NFL draft, which just occurred, and y'all's summer camps. So I'm going to open up for the first question, and whoever answers it first, all good. Just state your name and where you're at so that people who aren't watching on video know who you are. The first question is, what is the most difficult part of recruiting a high school kicker or punter? And again, the floor is open.
Ryan Dougherty, USC. I would say just for the analyst side of things is, the only time that, we get to see these guys in person is if they come to the summer camp. Not being one of the 10 coaches that gets to go on the road and recruit, it just makes it harder that you get to see them one time in person. Now, obviously, just like any other position, you're watching film on those guys and tracking them that way. But, there's just something about seeing guys in person that makes a big difference.
Yeah, Ryan Saparto, Oregon State. I agree with that. It's really hard to see these guys on film, and, film doesn't always tell the whole truth. Like, you want to see those guys live, and a lot of these guys will put, we like to call it driving range film up on Twitter where they're using sticks, right? Your conditions are perfect, right? It's good to see technique and all that, but it's not going to be a driving force to be like, oh, yeah, for sure, taking that guy. You want to see how they react in a camp environment and all that stuff.
Eric Raisbeck, Penn State. Just to echo what these guys said, I think the live eval is critical. If you can get them under some pressure situations with a snapper and a holder, use maybe your specialist to make sure you can get the conditions as good as you possibly can. But the hardest thing, the challenging thing to me is you basically got to throw high school tape on Hudl out the window. There's just too many variables. The film's not great. The view is from the sideline that's way back behind the track. You can barely tell. You got to really look closely. Some of these kids try to hide the fact that they're using a block because the film cuts off before they pick the block off the ground. Charting kickoffs, it's hard to track the ball. So you basically got to throw the film out of the window using Hudl, which makes it difficult until they are on campus, like these guys are saying. So the in-person stuff is obviously critical.
I think one thing that's always good to know, and this is Ryan's part of Oregon State again, is what kind of ball they're using when they're kicking, right? Like, these guys have big, juicy balls when they're out kicking on their own? Are they using a ball that we're going to use? Right. The Wilson GST and the Nike Vapor One fly a lot different. So, seeing if these guys are hitting a composite or that, and you can always ask the kid, but you just got to believe they're telling you the truth when they're seeing that.
Dude, are you using a punt, pass, and kick ball?
Yeah.
What the hell is this? I'm seeing a 70-yard kick. No, and what do y'all use over there at Oregon State?
We use the Vapor Elites. So our special teams coordinator, like in kickers, really dive into it. They get to pick the game balls with the quarterbacks. And like we lobbied one of our quarterbacks to switch from the Vapor One to the Vapor Elite. I mean, and like we were doing research on how to break them in, and like the ball's important, right? Like you got to make sure your tools are good.
Yeah,
one of the show sponsors is Big Game USA, and they make that ball right here in Dallas.
Yeah.
I was just saying we did the same thing. We made the switch as well. I think you're right, Ryan. The ball is critical. Sometimes you got to make sure that the quarterbacks are in line with that too, and the whole program philosophy of what's important. But to answer your question, James, about if we had the data, I think these solo videos that guys put on Twitter are good. But to Ryan's point, both Ryan's points, sometimes it's just off the sticks and they're just hitting the ball in good, perfect conditions. I'd like to see the same exact film where, dad's filming it, but they're getting a little more detail, getting a little more involved. Maybe their high school snapper and holder or somebody, or we're actually kicking, with a snap and hold and maybe some pressure, and just try to make the film as clearly defined as you can for us, without it being the Hudl film in game. But the stuff that kids are doing is good. It's just, I think we got to get to a point where they understand what's expected from us, and what we're looking for.
Well, what is it that you're looking for, Dougherty, down at USC? I mean, you have had some studs in your career, Gabe, Brkic, Austin Seibert. I mean, the list goes on. What is it that maybe those guys all showed in high school and that you're really looking for?
Just like they were saying, it's hard to do a lot with Hudl, and so I just kind of, for me, look at, when they're putting those extra points on there, okay, what's the ball doing? Are they getting it up high? Is the ball over the top of the uprights when it's going through the goalpost? And, you can say the same thing when you move back to a little bit longer kicks. All right, you don't just see, all right, does he make it? Yeah, we celebrate all makes here in games. It doesn't matter how it goes through. But, when I'm evaluating high school guys, I'm looking at that kind of stuff. And, from the angles like they were saying, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes. But, I'm looking at, is he getting the ball up quick? Where is it clearing the goalpost or the crossbar at? And some of those little things like that, just because obviously their Hudl film is basically all we get besides, dad filming on the side, which is obviously, like they were saying, most of the time perfect conditions. So all those balls should look pretty good. But in the game film, you can, you get a little, obviously the live rep, and you can see some different things. And, since that's kind of the cards we're dealt, that's kind of what I use to look at on, leg strength. And, I wouldn't say all kicks are blocked up the middle in college, but I would say majority of them are more so than off the edge. So, those kids getting that ball up fast is a key part of what I'm looking at. And then, I take into consideration if they're kicking off a tee. Kicking off a tee is easier. They're going to get the ball up faster off a tee. So, if they're kicking off the tee, then, for me, I want to see some type of film of them kicking off the ground, even if it's not in the game, just to show they can do it.
Yeah, I would echo everything you said. Just to me, if you're looking at place kickers, purely place kickers, right? The biggest thing for us is they got to be able to kick off the ground. And when I'm watching film and I see a kid pick up the block, it's very telling to me that it's very hard to even eval at that point. Like, to me, if they're kicking off a block and the ball's clearing the goalpost, like Coach is saying, it's not realistic in terms of what they can actually do. It's very hard to even use that film at that point for me personally. I would rather then see them kick off the sticks off the ground with dad shooting the camera than even waste my time watching the Hudl film at that point if I know he's kicking off of a block. Again, though, if we could evolve that to hey, there's a snap and a hold instead of just the sticks. I think that would be a much better film with the Twitter film that you're seeing out there. Kickoffs, obviously, you're just trying to determine long ball, right? Leg strength. If he's banging it out the back of the end zone, then clearly the kid has some sort of leg strength. But then you're trying to get as much of the hang time as you can with the Hudl film being a little gray and you can't track the ball. And one of my big pet peeves is that they'll pause the film and highlight where the ball is. And it's like, well, I can't time a hang time when you're stopping the film, right? So don't do that. Like, let the film run through so I can see, just how high the ball is to get an accurate hang time on you. So you're looking at just pure leg strength based on kickoffs. Can he hit it out the back of the end zone? Obviously, the difference in 5 yards from high school to college from where they're kicking off is going to be telling. Sometimes kids put their statistics in there of touchback percentage, but does that really translate to our game? Those are all questions you got to determine based on the distance of where the ball goes and then how high the ball is, if you can get accurate hang time. I'd like to see more film on Twitter of guys showing off their leg strength with their kickoffs. It's one thing to put that they kicked the 60-yard field goal with, like Coach said, with perfect conditions off the sticks from the middle of the field. I hit a 60-yard, and that's great, but does that really translate to kicking a 60-yarder in the game? But if I can tell how good their leg is based on some kickoffs, if their dad could shoot kickoffs so I could get hang time and distance from that, I think that would be a valuable tool for kickers.
Yeah, I love the word translate. I love the word translate because you're the translator here, right? And you've got an interesting stat about Penn State kickoffs in the last 2 years. You shared it with me a couple days ago. What was it?
Yeah, obviously we had a special kid. Jordan Stout got drafted in the 4th round, Baltimore Ravens. He was an elite talent with his kickoff leg. We had in the seasons of 2020 and 2021 combined, obviously 2020 was a shortened season, but with those 2 seasons combined, we actually only covered 6 kickoffs in 2 seasons of football, which I don't know if that's ever happened in the history of college football before. I've tried to actually look that stat up. And from my research and limited research that I've done, that's never been done in the history of college football. So we were very fortunate not to have to cover kicks, and that's a luxury that we all want, right? Everybody wants that. Everyone wants the kid with the elite leg that can put it out the back of the end zone. And those kids do exist, and they are out there. But Jordan was also a really good field goal kicker. His ability to get the ball off the ground with incredible height was stupid silly if you just watch some of our practice film. And he did tie the Penn State record for longest field goal in school history against Pitt in 2019. I think it was a 56-yarder. But just like those things – obviously, he had the leg strength from kickoffs, so you knew that if he was going to be a field goal guy as well, he's going to be able to hit the ball really well and hit it far. So that's where the translation to me comes into play is can a guy do kickoffs as well? And that'll really tell you what his leg strength really is. Now, it doesn't mean he's going to be the best field goal kicker in the world, but at least does he have leg strength to hit field goals?
Yeah, I was just going to ask, too, you guys, your opinion on this. So when we're seeing kickoff film on Twitter, do you want most of them up in the stands where you can see the whole picture, or would you rather have it behind the guy when they're doing it? Like, I'd prefer probably see, a few behind the guy to see his consistency in steps, how the ball flight is, that stuff. But we also need to get that big picture of, all right, where is it landing? What's the hang time? You guys got an opinion on that at all?
I mean, obviously the best would be having both, but
yeah,
I think for me, I would rather have where I can see the ball land just so I can, track it a little bit better and see how far it is actually going, especially like Coach was saying earlier. It's so annoying when they pause the film and circle the ball before it hits the ground. I mean, I've had times where I just turn the film off at that point because it's useless to watch. And, you can't get any hang times and, so I think I'd rather have it from the side where you can actually see the ball land and you can get the whole hang time. But obviously you like the back end view so you can have the fundamental side of it. But, I would rather, if I'm recruiting a guy, see how far he's kicking and what the hang time is.
I would agree with that, Coach. If we're talking peer recruiting, like I just need to know, can this kid do it or not? I'm going to just try to get the data, right? I'm going to try to see the data, the fundamentals and stuff like that. I think we can work on as when they get here, or we can mentor them into going to see their kicking coaches or whatever the process is. But in a perfect world, you'd get an intercut, which I think we need to get to that point. I think this generation of kids knows how to use technology, and I think the level at which all of our schools are at, I think the type of kid we're trying to recruit should be able to put together a film where we can intercut a back end and a sideline. I know that's a lot of work for a high school kid to do, but these kids, they obviously know they're talented and they know that they want to get recruited at a high level. I think that's something that they can invest in. And that's just part of educating the process of what we're looking for. And that's why I think, James, what you do is so impactful is not only are you have a product that can give us data, but also part of your mission is to educate these young men on how to get recruited too. So I think all of this is good. And I think I know Coach said in a perfect world you get both, but I think that's where we need to get to, is these top end kids need to be in a perfect world for us, so we can make sure we're making the best decisions.
Y'all's jobs are depend on it, right? Because you've got 15% of college football games that are decided by 3 points or less. What was interesting at the NFL Combine, I had an amazing opportunity of a lifetime. What the coaches all did is they sat in the stadium behind the visitors' bench, but actually closer, like on the 10-yard line. Between the 10 and 20-yard line is where that section was set up for kickoffs and punts. So when y'all are talking about that sideline view, that's what those guys were looking at for kickoffs and punts. And then when they went to field goal, I had no idea what was going on because I'd never been there, but everybody else did. They got up, left, and went behind the field goal post to do their charting on where the ball crossed the goal post. So that's just what they were doing at the NFL Combine. We talked about what y'all are looking for field goals, which is, okay, can you kick off the ground? Can you get the ball up high? Where's the ball crossing the field goal post? You're not so much looking for the 65-yard ball or 60-yard attempt right from the middle. And kickoffs, we're looking for leg strength. Like, where is the ball landing? Just again, like that view that they had at the NFL Combine, which was really nice. The guys could immediately see, where's this ball landing? The final question that I wanted to kind of round out the recruiting piece is, what are you looking for a punter in high school? Is there a distance, a hang time, operation time, location on where the ball's landing? Like, walk me through what the process is to find your punter from a high school perspective. And I'll lead it off with Eric Raisbeck from Penn State, because you've got to replace a guy with Jordan Stout.
Yeah, this one's a little more intricate. I think all the things we've kind of already touched base on, just getting that in-person eval is critical. Trusting the people that you turn to for these things, whatever the kicking coach or the kicking guru you use, I think you got to trust their eval too, because they work with them more often. It's kind of a combination of some things you already mentioned. Is obviously, can he hit the ball far? Some kids just can't. You're trying to track where that ball came down. Kids will put on their highlight film, oh, it was a 65-yard punt. But then when you look at it, the ball actually landed at 38 and then just rolled, and that's not what we're looking for. So you're trying to make sure you're measuring where the ball how far the ball actually traveled in the air. Can he do it or not? And then obviously hang time, you're looking at, can he do it or not? What are your measurables, whatever they are, whatever each coach at Oregon State or USC or Penn State, is looking for a desired ratio of distance and hang time, right? And then the last thing would be, just watching a little bit of his technique. I know Coach Saparto talked about that, is you're trying to see, how many steps does he take? Does he actually move quickly with the ball once he's caught it, when they get to our level, they have to be able to have a a good op time. And if they're slowing it down by just when they catch it to actually getting it off the foot, I'm always curious to just peek at a kid. Does he do that smooth? Does he do that efficiently or not? And it's not the end all be all, because they can grow and get better. They're allowed to get better as they grow. But that's just one of the things I kind of take a peek at after I measure the distance and hang.
Yeah, I kind of just saying the same things he's looking at. You kind of got that general thumb. You want 40 yards, 4 seconds, 41, 4-1, 42, 4-2, and so on. Sometimes that's a little unrealistic. If a guy's hitting a 55-yard punt, I mean, you're not going to get a 5.5 hang time 9 times out of 10. But, just that the hang times somewhat match up with the distances. And like he said, I don't track what the roll is. It's right where the ball lands. And, I even do that here for us, and breaking down opponent film and so on. If the returner doesn't catch the ball, same thing in practice. And that's how I base, their numbers off of that as opposed to a roll. Because then, obviously what the leg strength is. A roll could be, backwards, forwards, or sideways, obviously. And you just, there's no way to predict which way it's going to go. So, just, matching up those hang times as much as you can. And then just fundamentally, just that for me, I want to see that they've had some type of, coaching in or work on the fundamentals in somewhat. Being a former punter myself, I can tell pretty quickly if a guy has been coached before or not, or if he's just kind of out there doing it. Just to have some type of background in punting with whatever coach they use outside of their high school coaches. And then, the biggest, I guess, in my career so far, the hardest transition most guys have is the operation time side of things. And just showing that they can go faster, they can control their tempos and stuff like that is, you have a leg up in my mind if you can do those things by the time you get to us.
Yeah, I agree with all these guys.
Coach Dougherty or Saparto, is there a number of operation time? Like, is there a catch to kick, or what is it that y'all are looking for in y'all's league?
I mean, for the most part, everybody's, if you're under 1.30, you're probably good as long as you have a decent enough snapper. I would start there if just anything faster than 1.3.
Yeah, 1.3 is good. Rugby, obviously, you're going to be a little more, but that you can take away your hang time because it's getting put into your operation time.
I interrupted you, Saparto. Keep going.
Yeah, so I think I agree with these guys, right? You want hang and distance, but I also want to see a punter who plays another position. If I can get a guy who's a quarterback, that's best case scenario, right? Like I've seen a lot of guys who've been quarterbacks, translate to have success being punters, because kickers and quarterbacks get coached pretty much the same way, right? You're not going to dog cuss a quarterback if he throws an interception, right? You're not going to dog cuss a punter if he shanks a ball. So, I mean, those guys kind of correlate well, but I want to see a guy who plays another position. We just took a kid who's played defensive end, right? Like, can they show the athletic ability with it too? Because punter is a little more of an athletic position, in my opinion on it.
What makes you think it's more athletic?
I just think the movement patterns, right? Like in the way we run our punt, right? We're going to go rugby and pocket. We want a guy who, be a little more athletic, who can, maybe hold the ball. They don't have to have the whole thing be perfect, right? You're going to get out of routine sometimes. So just making sure they can move and be athletic with it. And then the operation time's big on the pocket punts and making sure those guys, I hate watching Twitter film and a kid's got a 1.8 hand to foot.
Yeah, that's going to get blocked by Dougherty's boys for sure. That's going to go back for 6. So now I want to hit on the second piece, because we can go on this for about an hour. If you haven't checked out previous roundtables, we've talked about how those other guys, Amon Nunn, Jeremy Springer, who's now at the Rams, Jonathan Rutledge, they're looking for guys that can, play multiple positions and multiple sports. So if you're a high school kicker or a punter, these guys are looking for athletes, not always technicians and specialists. They want to see how you can compete. But the second piece of what I want to talk about is developing this talent. So, Raisbeck at Penn State, you talked about translating, okay, from high school to our game. You've had some success in doing that. Dom Eberle at Utah State, Jordan Stout. You've seen it. You have had your hands on it. You've had your eyes on it. Of course, you've been upstairs. You haven't been coaching, and none of y'all have been coaching, right? Because we're all analysts here. But walk me through what that looks like, and how these guys translate from high school to college, and then your experience seeing them go from college to pro.
I think the biggest thing is the maturity piece. Young kickers come in, no different than any other position. Young players just have a hard time transitioning into the college level, just from a maturity standpoint, not necessarily ability. Like, we're all recruiting guys that have the ability. I think it was important what Coach Saparto said about finding athletes, and you don't just want the kid that can specialize in what we do. Obviously, once he gets to college, he will. But that's part of that maturation process, because if he plays other positions in high school and he comes in and he is a really good athlete in high school, and now he comes in and he's the kicker who is surrounded by the freak athletes that are on the field, and then you get put into, okay, this is what you do now all day, every day. Your entire practice is warming up, kicking, and stretching, and I think just being able to handle that is part of the growing process. Just looking at the two kids that you had mentioned, Dom Eberle and Jordan Stout, I think what changed that from them being young guys to being pro guys was just the ability to attack it as if their goal was to get in the NFL, and they approached their job in college the way a professional would. Jordan specifically, the change he made from 2020 to 2021 was just this mindset shift of, I'm going to do all three. I'm going to be the field goal guy, I'm going to be the kickoff guy, and I'm going to be the punter. And the process that he had to go through to make sure his body was in the right place, to make sure he was mentally approaching it the right way. He attacked the off season with the mindset of, I'm a professional now and I have to perform like a pro. So I think the mental part of it is the part where you see these kickers grow after their freshman year to sophomore year to junior year, and the faster they can do that, I think the more success they'll have for you. So our job is to make sure we're trying to unlock the mental side more than anything, because they all come in talented.
Yeah. But they don't all leave going to the NFL. But Dougherty, you were telling me when we last saw each other, your backups at OU were getting scholarships elsewhere. What was going on there, and how were you unlocking that talent?
Well, part of what we were doing and what we'll continue to do here is, our schedule through the week is what I think allowed that, and it gave the backups opportunities to get live reps and practice once a week, and it really started in that COVID time where you just didn't know who you were going to have on Saturday. I mean, you had to take that final test on a Friday morning, and you could lose your starting kicker, starting punter, starting snapper, and you had to have we talked as a staff about having at other positions 6, 7, 8 guys ready to go. Obviously in the kicking and punting world, you don't have that many backups. So, we worked on getting our backups ready, and then just kind of kept that going even after the COVID times of giving them, a full set of, 10 field goals. And, obviously when you're doing your punt team, if your second team is in, we use our backup punter and backup snapper. But, field goal wise, we gave him 1 day a week with the full team reps, with everybody watching, rushing the kicks, 10 kicks every week of the season. And it paid off for us. That first COVID year, our kicker tested positive with Wednesday of game week, and so our backup kicker came in and made 2 field goals and was a special teams player of the week in the Big 12 that week. And then that was enough film for him to pick up a scholarship after the season was over. And the same thing happened the year before that. So, I do try, if we're, up in a game or something like that, or we've had, scored a lot of points on offense, where, the kickers kicked off 7, 8, 9, 10 times, I'll try to get the backup in there just to kind of relieve them a little bit, because, obviously a kickoff takes a lot of toll on your body when you're sitting there on a game day and you've done 9 or 10 of them. That's more than you do in 2 weeks of practice almost. And so, just trying to help save those guys' legs throughout the year and letting the backup come in and play in some games. I think it's helped them, not only if they end up having to transfer, if they're playing behind a guy that's a freshman or a sophomore, that's obviously your dude. That most kids, just like any other position now, don't want to sit there behind that guy because they know he's going to be there for 3 or 4 more years. And so giving them the opportunity to get some game film and, have that opportunity to move on for them is, it's the right thing to do, number one. And if you have a guy that's deserving enough to play in a game and has earned that opportunity, then we try to give it to him.
Saparto, you were talking about yesterday how you get these guys ready to go. And it's something that you were learning in your master's program.
Yeah, so I've been getting a master's in teaching to try to get these guys kind of more concrete stuff. And one thing we talk about here, we call it the performance anxiety curve. Like it's normal and good to be nervous, right? That means you care. That puts you in the zone with stuff. And, getting these guys to trick their mind instead of saying I'm nervous, that I'm excited. And building that confidence if they get here. So like as a freshman, the first kick they have is not going to be a 50-yarder on the right hash, right? You're going to start them early, right? Build some confidence. But at the end of the day, practice is, it's meant to fail too, right? Like you need to have failures in practice so that you can learn and grow through the game. So as those guys' confidence grow, right, we're going to push that anxiety a little bit and let those guys, try harder kicks and more rushes. And we want to build that confidence, but, kind of keep them growing as well.
Yeah, and it's funny because what Dougherty's saying with his backups is he's putting them in a position to succeed by honestly giving them reps in practice. Because I'll tell y'all 10 years ago at LSU, as I was the kickoff guy, 0 reps for field goal. Everything went to the starter.
Yeah, I love what Coach Dougherty said. I think the one thing I really took away from what he said, I think is important is the competition piece of it. Making sure that all your guys feel like they're in contention, right? And putting them in a position to compete. So like what you said, James, I think scripting is important. We'll try to script for success, like Coach Saparto saying, but also script for reps, right? At some point, kind of who your starter is going to be and what he can do. So managing his reps is important for through the course of the season, especially when you get into fall camp. But then giving those other guys opportunities to compete. And then we do some too where, Coach Franklin will have those guys compete at the end of the practice with everybody watching, right? So putting them in a competitive environment where there's noise and everyone's eyes are on you, I think that gives them an opportunity to showcase what they can do and also puts them in a little bit of a pressure situation so we can see what they will do when the lights cut on. So I think that's the one thing that Coach Dougherty said I think is really impactful and powerful, that it's good that they do that.
Yeah. Dougherty, what did Seibert unlock or find that got him, ready for the NFL, and kind of same for Gabe? Is there any similarities that those guys kind of went through?
Well, they're 2 completely different people as just personality wise. I mean, they couldn't be more opposite, but obviously both of them came in super talented. And much like he's saying about Jordan, Austin did all 3 things. And, his management of time was the hardest thing for us to figure out, is just, all right, how much are you going to spend on each thing to be the best at each one? And, figuring that out was a little bit of a process for us. And, we came to figure out that, he didn't have to spend as much time punting. We knew that wasn't his, quote unquote future for the NFL. We knew it was in kicking. So, we did what we had to do punting wise to where he would be good enough for our team, and then spent more time for him on his, kicking and more so field goals, because kicking off, I mean, he was one of the best. I mean, we had a few more than 6 returned in 2 years, but he was an over 90-95% touchback guy for his whole career. And so we did not spend a whole lot of time covering kicks with him. It was more just getting his field goals right and doing those things, extra things there. He spent a lot of extra time up in the building, with the online classes and working his fundamentals, his footwork, and that really is what helped him make that jump from his sophomore year, when he had a little bit lower percentage on field goals, to his junior and senior year, being in the upper 80s and getting that combine invite and all those things, and then obviously getting drafted. Gabe was a little different, and I was going to say something about this earlier, but a lot of times there's not very many kickers that come in year one in June or July that are ready to go right away. And that was a scenario for Gabe where, he sat for a year. And so he was there Seibert's senior year, and we were hoping he could take some of the load off of Seibert, and he just wasn't ready yet. And, it took him a little bit to mature and to get to that point to where he was ready to play. And then obviously, you can go look at his next 4 years numbers. I mean, they speak for themselves. And, we attempted like 8 field goals over 50 yards last year, and he made 2 from 57 and 56. I mean, he had, just an incredible career and made some long kicks at key moments. And, he just took a little bit longer to be ready to go and mature enough to be able to beat the guy.
Interesting. Saparto, what about you? Is this what stands out to you from that?
Yeah, I think, with like the development piece of guys, is like they were talking about getting reps is huge. Like our scout kickers are always doing the reps for the kickoff return team and the punt return team and all that stuff. And, our backup kid loved going against the field goal block unit because it forced him to really get the ball up and move, and he made a bunch of kicks doing that. But yeah, I think the mental edge of these guys is the most important thing. And a good book for kickers to read is Golf's Not a Game of Perfect. Right? Like Jeff Choate told me that. Yep. I've been pretty fortunate to work for some good special teams guys, and Choate was always a big advocate of that. He'd always give the kickers that book when they'd show up. And it just talks about the mental side, and because kicking is mostly mental, right? Your technique is going to be what it is. You got to trust your holder, trust your snapper. So that's why we love having our punters hold, is you can get so many reps with those guys. But at the end of the day, it's teaching those guys tools and tricks to make sure that their mental game's on target.
Yeah, so last question before we round this off. This is Ryan Saparto, Oregon State. We have Eric Raisbeck at Penn State and Ryan Dougherty at USC. Saparto, I'll have you lead off with this. We were talking about a script and why that's so important for the guys once y'all have them and you have kind of leg management. If I'm a high school kicker or punter, what kind of advice would you give me on scripting my own day-to-day practice and if I want to be recruited?
I think a lot of guys like to do like a pitch count type deal. So, no more than 50 balls a day, right? That includes your warm up, that includes all your stuff. So, listening to your body, right? If you're having a hard day, right? You're missing kicks, you're not doing good. Well, stop, right? Like you're not in a good headspace, right? You're just going to create bad habits. You're getting tired while you're doing it. Stop, right? Like learn how to adapt, maybe journal it. We had a punter who we worked on, like he would journal like when he would punt. Right, to write down, okay, hey, I'm thinking this is what I did today. And he had something to go back to reference to when he had good days and when he had bad days.
So like distances and hashes, if you were to give me a couple kicks to script and punts to script, where would you want me to focus on?
I would probably do about 10 field goals, try to get, 3 to 4 on the right hash, 3 to 4 on the left hash, and then the rest in the left middle, right middle. And then kickoff no more than 5 fulls a day. And then punt about the same thing, 10 balls, mixing up your hashes, mixing up your directions, work on your field punts, work on your boundary punts, that kind of stuff.
What about you, Eric, up at Penn State? What would you look for in a field goal kicker for scripting and field goal and kickoff and punt? What would that look like?
Yeah, the one thing I think Coach Saparto said I think is super valuable for these kids to understand is understanding your body. Like being in tune with your body is important. I think as guys get older, especially late part of their college career, and then these guys in the NFL, that's what they're masters at, really, right? They know their bodies better than anybody. I think the sooner you can learn those things just by trial and error, like Coach said, if you're out and it's not a good day, might not be your day. Maybe it's time to shut it down and go the next day. As far as like scripts, that's really not something that, that I would mandate or tell them what to do. I think it's kind of based on how you're feeling that day. But I do like the parameters that Coach Saparto said, where you're showing variability. To me, that's what we have to continue to work on is variability. Like you have to be able to be confident in your right hash kicks just as much as you are in your left hash kicks. And I think working from the college hashes is critical. And make sure you're variable in your distances and hitting all the hashes. I think a lot of times these guys go out and they just hit, and I know we keep touching on this, but you just go out and you hit field goals from the middle, and that's great. But the percentage of balls to actually kick from the middle of the field in college are very, very, very low. So I need to see that you're able to kick it off the hash, and you need to be comfortable. Most right-footed kickers struggle on the hard right hash in college. So being able to see hard right hash kicks and be confident in those things, I think, is important for right-footed kickers. So making sure you're getting variability in all of your.
I think for me, just with if I'm watching a high school kid, just like it's the same thing that we're all saying. If I were to actually give them a script or something like that, I'd start with an extra point, then I go left hash. Then I go across the field, left, middle, right, and then back across the other way, right, middle, left, just kind of back and bounce back and forth that way. You are covering every part of the field, and then just backing up, how many ever yards each one. And that's kind of how I do our practice scripts here for our guys, in our set of 10 that we get live with the team twice a week. It's just one day you start from the extra point and go to the left, and then you start at the extra point and you go to the right the next day. So you're getting, the different angles in from each hash. And, just as our guys get older, I always make sure, once they're a junior or senior, I started this back with Austin Seibert in 2017, is giving them an NFL extra point every day. And not only just one of our extra points, but, if it's a guy that has the opportunity to play at that level, and with the extra point changing in the NFL, I mean, that's not an extra point anymore. It's a real field goal. And, working that into their script every single week for them I think has helped those guys, prepare to be ready for that in the future. And, I don't even tell them that I've done that. It's just one of those things I kind of did for them just to, start working it in where they're getting that kick. But that's kind of how I do our scripts here, is just, all the way across the field. And then, after a month or so of practice, or, in spring ball half our practices, I would look and see, all right, where are they missing more of the kicks from? Is it the right, middle, or right, left, middle, or left? And then I would include more of those so they can get some more work at them.
Well, this is something that needs to be said. The final piece I'll put on that, and then we'll close. I charted 25,000 kicks from high school kickers, and what we found from the data was that kickers go to the PAT and they back up in the middle of the field by 5 and 5 yard increments, and they average kicking like 30 to 40 balls. And it's like what you guys are saying is that is completely opposite from what you guys script in-house and what you would advise high school kickers. The very final question here is just state your name again and where kickers can find you, or punters or snappers can find you if they're interested in connecting with you guys. Floor's open.
I'm Eric Raisbeck, Penn State football. You can find me probably best on my Twitter handle at Coach Raisbeck, Raisbeck.
Yeah, Ryan Saparto, Oregon State, Twitter too, just Coach Saparto.
Ryan Dougherty, USC, obviously Twitter as well. Mine's Coach R. Dougherty. So.
And I'll put those links all down below. You know, guys, this was awesome. I was recently talking to a kicker, an unnamed kicker at an unnamed school, and he goes, you know what, man, what I'm figuring it out about 3 or 4 years into this program is we recruit kickers, but we don't develop kickers. And I can tell that these 3 guys absolutely do both. They recruit, they develop, and if you want to go to any of these schools, I'm telling you, these guys are absolutely the places that you will get a total experience, because these guys are going to invest in you, period. So I really appreciate you guys joining. This was awesome. Tons of insights, tons of quotes, tons of nuggets. So thank you very much. And we'll have to do this again sometime. Instead of being so technical and nerdy, we'll have to be like more fun and tell stories. If you enjoyed the show, make sure to like or subscribe by tapping on the icons below, and make sure to check out Simple Kicking on the web, simplekicking.com, on social media. And if you haven't already, please download the Simple Kicking app and find out whether or not tracking your kicks and punts is something that's a helpful tool for you.